Hi, my name is Jamie Lynch, and you are listening to Eating Habits, my podcast about everything restaurants. I will explore the human element of the hospitality business, and I'll talk to the who's who in restaurants, explore their stories, and hear what's on their minds in the ever-changing landscape of the food and beverage industry.
Hey, this is Ashley Boyd, Culinary Director at 300 East in Charlotte, North Carolina. You're listening to Eating Habits.
Awesome. Hey, Ashley.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome aboard.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
The Eating Habits choo-choo train.
Yay.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Yeah? How are you doing generally?
In general, pretty good. It's
Yeah?
a lot better than, the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So things have kind of eased up a little bit for me.
It's been a wild ride. That's a lot of the stories that we're talking about is surviving this whole pandemic thing. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about your story, your origin story, where you came from. I know 300 East has been around since the 80s, I think, right?
Correct. 1986, and that's only in its current location.
Oh, wow. When was 300 East developed originally?
So we actually were the White Horse, and only people who have lived in Charlotte for a really long time know what that was.
I do not know what that is.
Yeah. So it was kind of a tavern.
Okay.
They actually ended up with a couple of locations, a couple of franchises.
Okay.
And one of them was on East Boulevard, and it's in, I don't know if you remember the little house that used to hold East Boulevard Bar and Grill.
Yeah.
It was there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where the White Horse was, and my mother was working there from the time I was a tiny kid.
What did she do there? What was her?
She was a manager.
Okay.
Started waiting tables and then ended up as manager. And some stuff went down with the owners of that franchise. Basically, they bankrupted the business. And she went through a process called debt acquisition, which means basically she agreed to take on all of the debt that they had accumulated. And through
so
that
she
means,
personally guaranteed all the
yes,
debt
somehow
and everything.
even though she was super young at the time, and closed it down, put everything in storage, moved up the road to where we are now on East Boulevard, the other end of East Boulevard, and had that other house, is a 2-story house this time, rehabbed, and then moved everything back in and opened up still as the White Horse, and that was 1986.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then at some point, I believe it was like 1990, she closed and then reopened as 300 East.
Where were you in all of this? So you must have been young.
Yeah, I was around. I spent a lot of time in the original location, just, after school, whatever.
Yeah, doing what exactly?
Sometimes homework, sometimes just getting on everyone's nerves and being in the way.
I think, it's funny. I was excited to talk to you about this specific thing because my kid, Max, who's 18 now, works at La Belle Helene.
Oh, wow.
I remember when I was the CDC at Barrington's for Bruce, and Max was maybe, like 3 or 4 maybe, or like small.
Yeah.
And on the weekends, I shared custody. So he would be in the kitchen with us.
Oh, wow.
And I would stick him in the biggest stock pot we had, like next to my station, and like with like toys and stuff. And he would just be in there like yelling and screaming and like throwing shit around.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I bet that echoed.
Yeah.
In that
little kitchen. Yeah, with that little kitchen at the window. He'll be like, what is going on back there? Is the chef like throwing shit? It's like, that's Max.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
That's great.
So what was that experience like for you? I mean,
it's hard to say what that's like when that's what you know. So
yeah,
it was just
normal.
like normal stuff. And then when we moved, I was around 13 at that point, and I pretty quickly started working. Terrible at it, working as a host.
So you were working the front desk.
I was so awful.
Why were you awful? Were you awful because you were a teenager, or were you awful because you like the part of the job?
I didn't care. I wanted a paycheck, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
I'm terribly socially awkward. And, as a 13-year-old, that's like a given, right? But then when, that's also your personality, really, really bad. And I just, had no idea, what I was doing. And, eventually kind of got it, I guess, and would serve when I was not in school or when I was home from school or whatever over the summers. And actually at that point really started to get into it, like really enjoyed serving and juggling all that stuff, like having every part of my brain occupied.
Yeah.
And handling a million things at once. I had an appreciation for that. So that's, I guess, the point where I started really actually getting interested.
Was your mom managing the restaurant at that point? Like, what was her role in the operation when you started kind of working in there?
She at that point was there all the time, because it was basically a new restaurant. And so she was there, gosh, I feel like, pretty much all day, all night,
right,
5 days a week. And then the 2 days that she was not there, I would stay with her. And the rest of the time I stayed with my dad.
Gotcha.
And, eventually grew the business to the point where she didn't have to be there all the time.
Yeah.
Always, but very, always like extremely hands-on, present, nitpicking.
Yeah.
As you must.
Right on. So what was your trajectory through the restaurants? You started as a host, or
yeah,
I don't know if you
something,
were a host, you were
a body,
a front door person,
right.
The greeter. I don't know.
Yes, dead weight.
And then what was that look like?
Yeah, I did that for a couple of years because I wasn't old enough to start serving, and I think at some point my mom actually fired me because my hair was too many different colors at once. So I had to kind of tone it down, and because I'm like, okay, well, I want the job, so I'm gonna go down to 2 colors and come back.
How many colors was it before?
It was 3.
Okay.
That was one too many.
Wild child.
I liked to experiment.
Nice.
I wish I had that much hair to experiment with now. And so I guess I was serious enough to come back, and it was never full time. Yeah. Obviously, because I was in school or whatever. Right. But as I, went through high school, actually went away to high school for my last 2 years to School of the Arts in Winston-Salem.
Cool.
And I'd come back over the summers and on breaks, and I'd serve, and just really enjoyed that a lot. Plus, quick money is always good. And then I went away to art school in Chicago and waited tables all through that. I did graveyard shifts in a diner there on the weekends. I'd go to school all week and not work. And then on the week, like Friday nights and Saturday nights, and sometimes then Sunday brunch, I'd do like the 10 to 6.
Hell yeah. Where was this diner at?
Oh my gosh. It had a few locations, but the one that I worked on the most was, I believe, on Halstead. Yeah.
What was the craziest thing you remember from the graveyard shifts?
Well, it was sort of in the middle of what's that university that's sort of right there in the middle of town?
I wouldn't know.
I can't. It'll come to me.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, it's a university, DePaul.
Okay.
So we had a lot of college kids coming in after going to the bar, and one time I had
drunk ass.
Oh gosh, awful, obnoxious, but also fun. And one of them threw up in their coffee cup and left it for me one time.
Oh,
really
nasty.
Yeah. And thought it was funny, they're just kind of like giggling about it.
You're like, ugh, gross.
So, I got to see it all.
One of my really good friends when I was growing up, this is after high school, but I went back to the North Shore of Boston. She worked at a truck stop diner, and I used to go and just like hang out there, drink coffee, and like bullshit with her, and like some crazy stories happen in a diner, and especially a truck stop. So
yes, it was fun times, but interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so how was that experience, the college there? What were you studying?
It was good. I was studying visual arts.
Okay.
So painting and sculpture mostly, and it was the School of the Art Institute, which is different from the Art Institute. It was actually the museum school that's attached to the Art Institute of Chicago.
Cool.
So we had all access to that museum. So I spent so many hours in the museum just like sitting with my favorite works or like napping in one of the installations that was really dark.
Find a place where there's nobody in.
Exactly. So it was great. And once I was done with that, I thought that I wanted to go into conservation and restoration of sculpture, of paper, stuff like that. And I worked in that for a little bit, and, as an intern and trying to get a paying job. And after a while, sort of half realized that it was really competitive and I was going to have to work for a long time to get a job like that, and half realizing that I absolutely hated it. So I, sort of I had this second love of food and the restaurant business, and I went and got a job in a restaurant that was opening as part of the opening crew, and never looked back.
What position?
It was garde manger.
Okay, so did you know that you wanted to be in the kitchen? Was this kind of like I'm curious how that switch came, where, obviously you grew up, your mom's a manager running a successful business in Charlotte. You've got this art kind of thing going on, interest. Was there a relationship there that made you want to be in the back of the house, or was it just what was available, or?
It was a sort of a budding interest in food and cooking, which I thought was sort of a side thing.
Yeah. Cool. Garde manger. How was that?
It was really interesting.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
So it was in a Brazilian steakhouse, like a churrascaria kind of place.
Okay.
And it was right in like what they call Boys Town, which is like the upper end of Halstead Street, like above the area where a Cubs stadium is. And at night, so we would have, at night, all the chairs would get put up on chair rail that would then lift up. The ceiling would
like retract
raise.
It?
Yes. And it became a club.
Okay.
And
party time.
Yeah. So, which is brilliant, right? Because
Yeah.
they could just, after dinner service, just keep on making money.
Yes.
And during dinner service, we had a Carmen Miranda impersonator visiting the tables.
That's hilarious.
But the actual kitchen, the designers had forgotten to kind of add on the garde manger station to the exhibition style kitchen. So they kind of squeezed me in like near the door to the stairs, which is where you would go to the prep kitchen, which is upstairs, which is where the freezer was. So every time I had a dessert that had ice cream, I had to go up the outside stairs into the prep kitchen, into the walk-in freezer where I had all like my igloo of ice cream set up, scoop my ice cream in a cake pan, and then run back down the outside stairs into and one of the desserts had 3 scoops of ice cream on it, like 3 tiny. So that was fun, especially when it was snowing outside.
Right.
Yeah, like I remember coming
you
out.
Put your boots on and like do like a
yes.
a switch out.
And I hadn't
gear.
figured out kitchen shoes at that point, so I was always in Converse, which is terrible.
Yeah, they're soaking wet all the time.
Wet,
no
traction. And there was a couple times I ended up like on my ass on the steps and like watching my little scoops of ice cream kind of like roll down the steps.
Oh, I gotta go back.
So it was nightmare material, but also like just fun. I didn't know any better,
right. But now you get to look back and just laugh at all those experiences and be like, wow.
Yeah. And I have a good, like, when I was your age, I had to.
Right. In my Converse.
Right.
Up the
in
metal
the
stair on ice. Yeah.
Actually in the snow.
Right. At least our entire kitchen's inside the building.
Right. You don't know how good you have it.
Yeah.
Everything's so cramped up. It's right there, you know? Small kitchen, but it's right there.
That's funny. So was that where you got introduced into the pastry world?
It is. We had a really good pastry chef there. Her name was Tanya Hemphill, I think at the time. She's married now. But she had just come from working at Charlie Trotter's and then to Rick Bayless's place, Frontera and Topolobampo, and then to this place.
Yeah, those are big, heavy hitter, like changing the game in the 90s kind of spots.
Exactly. So I did not realize that a pastry chef was something that you could do for a job, and I was, really fascinated. And so I asked her if I could come work with her on my days off, which I did, and she was very patient, even though like I had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
Like I don't know if you're like this, but the less I know, the more I think I know. Like at least when I was younger, like thinking I'm gonna be a natural. Like I got this.
When I was younger, 100%.
Exactly. And now it's
I just
the
realize,
opposite.
now I know, I
Right.
realize I know nothing.
Yeah.
Still.
It's like the older you get, the less
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
At least in your own mind.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
So you were a little know-it-all. You were
I was a little
hot
know-it-all,
shot.
but she was very patient, took me under her wing, and I guess recognized that I maybe would be able to do this if I got rid of the attitude.
What do you think that was? Do you think she identified like natural talent, or just like
I'd like
the
to think
willingness
that
to
was
be-
what it was.
In
But I
your
don't really
mind,
know.
In my mind, it was that.
But we developed a nice relationship, and she was just really kind, and I ended up, that was a great introduction because she did a lot of things that required me to slow down and, actually pay attention, forget what I thought I knew. And there were a lot of moments of like, this flan is scrambled. Like, can you not taste the difference between mine and yours? And I'm like, oh, no,
Yeah.
things like that.
Ugh.
So, yeah, it was brutal, but she was so nice.
How much of that do you find yourself doing nowadays? The mentoring, taking somebody under your wing?
A lot, because I had great role models for that, like her and another Stefanelli, who you've worked with, was a really important mentor of mine, and she was the same way, just kind, patient. I felt like a fuck up all the time. She just loved me, like was so nice to me and was appreciative.
She must have really liked you, because she could be a little cold to people that she did not like.
Yeah, or we had a good relationship.
Or the people that did not respect her space and her station. I remember she was very kind of firm about her mise en place.
Firm is a good way to describe her.
Yeah, it was like, don't fuck with my stuff.
Right. She's a very kind person, but she has very clear boundaries and very clear idea of her worth and her importance in the operation.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. She was one of your mentors.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. So is that kind of, through that relationship, like that first kind of like mentoring kind of experience, is that kind of where the hooks were in you to like follow the pastry world? Because that's how I knew you early. So we've known each other for like, I don't know, like 15 years or something.
Yeah.
I think I might have been working at Ethan's.
We did that first event together was for Maria Fisher.
Yeah.
Right? Out on some farm.
Yes.
With a yurt. Now I can't remember like
what year that was.
Yeah.
It was in Charlotte.
But I think that was the first time we met.
Yeah, it was like 15 years ago or something. It was a long time ago. But I only knew you as a pastry chef. I didn't even know your backstory about your mom, owning the restaurant and your kind of history there. And I eventually want to get to that transition from pastry to like now being a partner, owner, savory chef, like what that's like. But I think that's how most people remember you in Charlotte, right? Because I think you're probably one of the strongest pastry chefs, hands down, in the city, for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, you've earned it. Talk about your ethos. Like, once the hooks were in and you had like some of these role models kind of like showing you the way, right, helping you down that path, what became your kind of approach to pastry and all that kind of stuff?
Well, that was like very non-linear, but I moved around I went to school, was gone for 5 years, and then moved around working for another like 5-6 years. And came back.
Were you always in restaurants when you were like moving around?
Restaurants, hotels,
hospitality type jobs.
Yeah, always in pastry. And came back to Charlotte because my mom needed a GM. And hers was career changing, and she wanted me to be that person, and I was like, okay. So I came back, and I was GM for 5 years while also making all the desserts, which was crazy.
Yeah. Well, hold up. We gotta dive into this. Okay, so how did you take over the role as a GM? Like you didn't have that experience.
I didn't have that experience. And again, I was terrible at it, but thought that I was fine,
right. When did you realize you were terrible at it?
It was gradual.
At start, right?
It was gradual. I'm not sure exactly when I realized. I think the longer I did it, the more awareness I had
right.
of
With everything, you're like,
just
oh, wait a minute.
not having a good intuitive ability to relate to a broad swath of people and project that like warm. I was warm. I was friendly, but like awkward. Like I would say the wrong stuff or get like stammer or like mean to say one word. Absolutely.
I love it.
I'm like one of the most awkward people on earth. I'm convinced of it. So
have you embraced that yet? Like, are you like, this is just who I am and it's totally okay? Because I think people like it. I do. Like we do.
It's
like
part
chef
of my
people
charm.
Do. Yeah, totally. Like I think the chef and like people love it.
It's hard to embrace it, but I've resigned myself to it. Like I can work on it, but I'm never gonna be like that much better.
Right.
So yeah, not a great fit when you're supposed to be the embodiment of the air of hospitality, and the skill and being nimble with negotiating with people and
different types of people too. Like
you got to do some hard stuff, in the front of house. Sometimes you have to tell a table that had a reservation and is like having a great time and enjoying themselves 3.5 hours later that
it's time to go.
You need their table.
You gotta go.
And there is a nice way to do that where 99% of people are going to be like, oh, hey, free drinks at the bar. Hell yeah. Like that's totally cool. We didn't even realize we were here so long, but having a couple experiences like that where it's like, shit, what do I do? And then whatever I decided on was the wrong thing. So eventually, not.
I love it. So was that the hardest part of GMing for you? Was the people aspect of it? How did you handle like
that's
the
all there
financial
is
stuff?
Almost,
Were you responsible for the financial stuff? Like numbers and like budgets and things, or was that kind of handled by accountant?
We didn't have an accountant, but my mom is so intuitively great with the number side of the business. And so she makes it look like she's just flying by the seat of her pants, right? When in reality, she has complete control over everything. And therefore, she didn't even ask me to like participate in that.
Got it.
Honestly.
So she just kind of like took care of it. You never had to worry about it. That's awesome.
No, I mean, I guess it's awesome in one way, but in another way,
it's
nice to be able to, learn things. So but she's sort of a genius with that kind of thing and didn't really care to let anybody in on it. It's just, okay, we're not busy enough on Friday night, so do something to, like that's the kind of
make it happen or something, like change something,
or we need to tweak our prices or whatever. And I got a general idea of like what our percentages should be for food cost and labor and whatnot. But in terms of like the nitty gritty, she would take care of most of that.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good for
allowing me to focus on being extremely awkward with the guests of the restaurant.
There was a lot of work that had to be done in that department.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how long is it? And at this time that you were managing this, you were also
GMing.
You were GMing. Well, air quote the GMing. You were the pastry chef as well.
Yes.
So what was that like? I mean, I think for me managing any department is like, I'm very like all in on stuff, like if I'm like, when we opened Five Church, I was like consumed, right? Like that was it. Like that's the only thing that existed in my world. And it took every bit of energy and focus to do it well. Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it well at all for about 3. I think it took about 3 years for me to start to do well at it.
Huge learning curve.
Yeah, it was pretty wicked. Yeah. But so I can't imagine how being responsible for the overall operation. Also, you were business partners with your mom? Was she still a partner at that point?
No, she was sole owner at that point.
Okay, so your mom owns the business. You're responsible for it, basically.
Right.
Answering to mom, and you have to make your mark as a pastry chef. What was that like?
There wasn't any like making a mark as a pastry chef at that point. Like my
in your mind, you were just kind of like,
I was just doing it because I knew that, okay, I'm going to commit to being the manager of the front of house. However, I know myself and I know that I'm going to be severely just terribly unhappy if I'm not in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So just trying to like do it all and
Mm-hmm.
make her happy, you know? So it was sort of at that point, maybe a 20-hour a week job, pastry chef part of it.
Okay.
And we have some good friends that have a catering kitchen down the road, and they let me use that space to produce the desserts.
Oh, nice. You had your own space. You didn't have to deal with all the dirty line cooks.
I was there by myself, which I thought I liked, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I think I need to be around people a little bit more than that. And so, yeah, I did that about 20 hours a week, and then however 60 hours a week doing the GM thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it was just something I did to keep myself sane, basically, although in hindsight it was insane.
Yeah.
And really was not able to focus on the food side of things
Mm-hmm.
until I stepped away from being the GM.
When did that happen?
That happened when I started my family. So
Okay.
I just realized that I couldn't be the kind of parent that I wanted to be and also have that big of a role at that point. And my mom was gracious enough to, you know, understand that. And we brought someone else in as GM.
When was this? How old your?
That was 2006, and then my son was born in 2000. Well, actually, I think I went actually right up until like a week before being GM, and then had it in 2007.
Okay. This is
right?
the cutoff.
Yeah.
I'm having a baby. Like it's time to.
Right. Like, see you guys on the other side.
And that was in 2007?
7.
7?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My son's 15.
I can't do the math on that. He's 15.
He's 15.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Phew. Thanks for that. So that's a smart move to realize that. So you had to have some self-awareness about how crazy the job you were doing had become.
Yeah.
That you weren't going to be able to kind of do it all.
Exactly. And also knowing at that point that really was not where I could contribute best to the business.
Okay.
Because I just am much more of a back of house person. So step back, was home with my kids during the day, and then would do the desserts at night. And in that way, my husband and I kind of avoided having to do daycare. We never saw each other, but but we would kind of switch off. And, you know, I was thinking, okay, well, I can do this job like 20 hours a week still, you know?
Yeah.
And then it just kind of slowly like took over, you know?
As it does when
and just, you know, once I was able to really like focus on it and think about it. I mean, I think I made decent desserts during the time I was GM, you know, because I loved it and I had a good
you cared
knack
about
for
what
combining
you were doing.
flavors and, you know, doing things that were a little bit different, but I really couldn't put time into it, you know, enough
really
to
focus
really
on-
have great desserts,
Yeah.
you know?
Focus on like technique and like
Yeah.
different stuff like that.
Right.
When did you go back into the restaurant after you had your son? Was it-
I was home for 6 weeks. and
okay,
then
so
back
you
in.
went right back. You were
Yeah.
just like, let's get started here.
Right. That's the longest that's the longest I have not worked in my life.
Since you were
Since I was
13.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Does your son work that way? Do you put him to work in the restaurant?
He has. I don't think that he loves it. He was like, it's really hot and really stressful. Like,
Yeah.
yes, it is. And so he's sort of trying to become a little entrepreneur. He orders lots of like game controllers and things off of eBay, and
Yeah.
they're broken.
Yeah. Fixes
And
them.
he's working on fixing them and then selling them at, you know.
He sounds
20
very
times
similar
more
to
than-
Max, my kid. Max is a very entrepreneurial kid. I think he learned early on, like, he does not want to be a chef, period. Like, he worked in the kitchen with us briefly. He worked actually, that's not true. When he was like 6, he worked the waffle station during brunch, which might have scarred him out of being,
bet.
yeah. I think we had the 2 jammer waffle thing, and you get an order of like 12. And the 6-year-old's just getting hammered on that station. He was just like, and I'm yelling at him. I'm like, come on, Max, you got to keep pushing. Let's go. We're like in the weeds. And he's like, I hate this. Like, I don't like being yelled at by my dad in front of a bunch of people and like, you know, hot and sweaty. And
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
that's
so-
hilarious. No, I didn't bring Emmett in until he was 14.
okay, well, that was nice. I didn't have a choice. I had him on the weekends, and
Right.
brunch is going on. Whether
You might as well use those hands.
Yeah, I mean, I was teaching him a lesson.
Exactly. Apparently, it was effective.
It was. Well, he came back to us. So he came back to the kitchen, and because he wanted money. Like when he was 6,
Exactly.
I wasn't paying him.
Right.
It was straight up child labor.
Right.
Like no question.
Earn your keep.
Yeah. But then, in high school, he's like, I need a job. I need to make some money. And I was like, all right, well, you've worked for me before. I would love to be involved in your first like legit job so I can like hammer you with some real work ethic. And he's like, all right, cool. So he started as a dishwasher. And he hated that. I mean, at Church and Union, like 450 cover nights, you're just soaked the whole night. It's hot.
Yeah.
You get out of there, you have no skin left,
Yep.
And so he was like, I don't want to do this. So he got moved. He did it for a few months because I wasn't like, nah, you're not getting
Right.
special treatment. He did it. He did his time there, and he grinned about it and like did a good job. We moved him to Garmager, which he liked better, but also now he was on the line.
Yeah.
Like he's not hiding in the dish pit doing dishes. He's like in the thick of it. And he was like, not doing that. Yeah.
Nope.
So he said no go on that. And so now he's a barista. He's like, he's gone to the dark side.
Okay.
He's at the front of the house situation.
Nice.
And he seems to like it pretty good.
Cool.
He's making like good money.
Yeah.
He's senior in high school. He's like, oh, this is great. I can
That's awesome.
have a career just like schmoozing and making coffee.
Right.
I'm like, oh, great. Here we go. So we'll see.
Maybe he'll come back.
Yeah. Well, maybe Emmett will come back.
Yeah.
Right. So he'll get over his controller thing and he'll be like, you know what? Maybe I'll follow my mom's footsteps.
Yeah. I mean, he does. He is very interested in food, interested in cooking, but I think he'd rather have me do it.
Yeah. It's always better. I tell everybody it's better when somebody else makes it.
So we'll see. I mean, it was never my intention to go back into the business. It wasn't my intention to not do, but
Right.
like it just sort of like if you get
have
the
the
bug,
gene.
it just like pulls you in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, in your mom, like it's definitely in your blood. Like there's not, you're done for.
For sure. Yeah.
So while we're on the family topic, we got to talk about your husband briefly, because I was introduced to. Why don't you talk a little bit about his view on food?
Oh my gosh.
You know what I'm talking about specifically, right?
No.
Is his?
Oh, his Instagram.
Yeah.
So he's never taken food that seriously. Like it's not
Right.
entertainment for him.
Yeah.
And of course he gets dragged to all kinds of events and, forced to eat things that he doesn't know what they are.
And talk to food people.
Talk to food
Yeah,
people.
who are all like obsessed with
right.
like.
And he's like, oh God, I'm dying.
Yeah. Is food just fuel for him? Is it just like, this is how I get through a day?
I think it has traditionally been that for him. And I think just recently I've kind of laid off of it with him.
Uh-huh.
Like, okay, this is who we are. And like, I'm not going to make him miserable insisting that he,
Right.
attend. Like I pick and choose very carefully the things I ask him to do with and for me around that. But I think since I've stepped back from that a little bit, he's like, wait a minute.
Oh, wait, you're leaving. I'm left out now.
He used to be like, I don't like when we go out to a restaurant and like the chef comes and talks to you for the whole time. Like,
Yeah.
Can we just go to like, I don't know. Wherever.
Corey hates that too.
Yeah.
She hates that.
But now, recently, I'm like, oh, let's just go to this little place down the road. Like it was our anniversary. We like went and stayed in a hotel and just get away for a little bit. And I'm like, let's just go to the hotel bar and have dinner. And he's like, I kind of want to go somewhere that you know and you like, and that where they know you.
Oh,
I'm like,
see.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let me make some phone calls.
Right.
That's awesome.
So it's funny. I think there's a little bit of like always being the contrarian in there. It's like his personality type.
Right.
So yeah. So no, he was dragged to a food festival one year recently and was convinced.
Do you remember which one it was?
Oh no, it was
Charl-
the Beard House.
Okay.
Oh,
that's so perfect. When everybody from Charlotte went up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's the whole crew.
Right. And Jesse and Aaron from Fresh List and Chris Reed convinced him that he should start a food Instagram. So he did, and he misspelled the handle. And so now it's my awesome food pics.
So everybody, you got to, if you have anybody who's listening, for our 5
Follow
followers,
him. He'll hate it.
What is it?
Awesome. I think it's AWRSOME. My awesome food pics.
And it's hilarious. So talk about it. So we all love it, by the way. So all the chef people and restaurant people are like, oh my God, this is so magical.
It's just very unironic, blurry, focusing on very weird stuff.
Yeah.
Pictures, usually of food, some kind of food.
Yeah.
But sometimes of like a brick wall.
Yeah. You're like, what is that? You're like, what?
Right. Is this a cake?
Yeah. What's going on? Like a lot of the pictures are like close up, out of focus.
Yeah.
Like poor lighting. You're like,
Right.
What is that?
With like
foie gras
one word
or like,
captions that are sometimes spelled correctly, sometimes not.
Is that an entree or a piece of roadkill? Like what's going on in this picture?
He's extremely funny. Like
Yeah.
that. He's just he's very witty, and it's just he does not take it seriously at all, and he hardly ever posts.
Right.
So he has to usually be prodded to.
Yeah. Well, you need to get on him about that a little bit. Yeah, because that's we all like really embrace it when we see him. We're like, yes, another one.
Oh gosh,
that's funny.
Yeah, it's hilarious. He also has another Instagram that's actually really good, but it's private, so he's like one follower.
I think on the bus for our last little field trip, I tried to I don't know if he's accepted it yet or not.
He just hardly ever goes
Yeah,
on there.
it's like,
Like hell go on and post, but he's not going to look at like any notifications or anything.
Good for him for not caring.
He does not care at all.
I really appreciate that, because like for us, I think, so what's your take on that? Like how interested are you in reviews or social media posts about your restaurant or like the criticism and stuff? Because I know that's a hot topic for people a lot, is like everybody's a fucking critic now because they have these stupid platforms. And
right.
What's your take on that? Do you partake? Do you approve, disapprove?
As far as like how I feel or react to reviews, to food bloggers, to influencers.
Do you get bad reviews?
Oh God, yeah.
Okay, thank
goodness. Absolutely.
I was like, we're not the only ones.
Yes, we absolutely get bad reviews, and we make mistakes, and it's hard. It's like, okay, there are some where it's like you have a legitimate point and we're going to fix it, and you make your best customers that way. And some, it's like, I think you have an agenda.
I think there's a lot of that.
And I may not play into that, And some of our bad reviews are people who had expectations of one thing, and that may not be what we are. And because we don't fit the picture of what they thought the meal was supposed to be like, it's, they're
let down or mad or upset or whatever.
Right. And, they may have been going off like something one person said one time, to build their expectation. Or they're mad because we have a condensed menu, because we still have not built our menu back up after COVID. I mean, we still tweak it, but we just realized how much better that was for us operationally.
Why?
We have a very small kitchen. We have very condensed storage space, not a lot of cold storage. And to have over a certain amount of prep items to have to find room for, and the ingredients to go in those prep items, and the space on the line to keep the meats for those dishes is just, it creates a lot of stress, and the outcome is not worth the difficulties.
Yeah, logistically, it's just like it's better
for
you can put out a
our
better
staff,
experience.
better for our
Is your menu,
food
is it a
safety,
big menu? Was your menu big before? Was it like a large
It was
one?
never like huge, but we run the same for lunch and dinner now, and then we have Saturday and Sunday brunch.
Did you used to do the split, like lunch menu,
switch
to dinner?
Then we switched to dinner, and then we did brunch on Sundays. And now, instead of 3 different menus, we have 2 menus. And that disappoints some people who feel like, now that we're sort of coming out of the pandemic, we should expand it again. And I get where they're coming from,
Sure.
but it's just not right for us right now. It's not right for our staff. It's not right for the smoothness of our of our operation. So
Yeah.
so we have our fun with our features, and we make little seasonal tweaks. But really, our menu is like our core items that people would go apeshit if we took them off the menu. You know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
How many of those items are there? I mean, you guys have been around for a hot minute, so people are
lot.
like, I wonder, I'm curious if you know the answer to this. Do you know what roughly your percentage of like regular guests are to like first time diners, or?
I don't know the percentage, but I know that we have a good mix because our business stays pretty steady. And that is really the difficult part about running this particular restaurant is maintaining and, catering to your regulars, your loyal people, because that's who's always kept us afloat when things were bad.
Yep.
And then you always have to bring in new faces. So it's a really, really delicate balance. And I think that's like the most challenging part of being in this particular restaurant.
Yeah. When did have you always been interested and immersed in kind of the local food scene? Because like PCG, a lot of the farmers market stuff, you're very involved in that stuff, local sourcing. Has that always been part of your process at 300 East, or is this something that you kind of like grew into, and kind of where you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely something that I had to kind of start. And we've had, several different chefs over the years, before I came back full time. But, to different extents, they would source some local things. Not a whole lot, but, they made an effort. And I think, when I first came back to Charlotte, I feel like I say this a lot. We all say this a lot. There were some good things happening, but everyone was doing it in their own little bubble. It didn't. And I was at the restaurant like all the time. Like I didn't go anywhere. I was never anywhere but the restaurant or home, pretty much. So if there were any like events or dinners or anything going on, I would not have known about it.
Right.
And so it really wasn't until PCG started doing things.
Yeah.
That I sort of became involved in that, because it's like, okay, like here's a network, when it may have been just so diffuse before.
Yeah.
That it was,
I think everybody was doing that, right? Like we were doing it at Ethan's. I know Tim Grudy and all those guys were doing it, using local products and kind of pushing this farm to table narrative, like trying to build that for Charlotte. And I think you're absolutely right. Like it was totally compartmentalized, right? Like in the neighborhoods or like whatever. And there were so many corporate joints at that point. Like that was kind of like the landscape, right? Like that was the expectation in Charlotte then. And until I think that the PCG thing really helped bring people to like narrow that narrative and get everybody kind of on the same page and promote it. And that was all these restaurants were doing it, had local stuff on their menus, were either whatever, but it didn't have the support or focus, I think, which has been great, because it's also brought a lot of us together. The chefs, like kind of connecting the chefs together to kind of see what's going on and all that, which has been awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Charlotte's always been, to me, an environment where the chefs all get along. It hasn't been like a cliquey sort of environment. Like, I cooked in New York for a long time, and it's like super cliquey, like wicked competitive. And Charlotte's always seemed like like a pretty open landscape for chefs to share ideas and stuff like that. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, I have. And I think sort of, from the formation of the Culinary Guild and sort of bringing sort of a smaller scene together, because, it was a smaller group at that point, that allowed that to happen. And a bunch of chefs sort of joining that community and maturing together. And, it has always been, for the most part, a tight-knit, welcoming community.
Speaking of that, the Farm to Fork dinner, the annual PCG Farm to Fork dinner is
Yep.
coming, or picnic
Yep.
is coming up.
September 25th, right?
September 25th.
Yep. That's
You know what you're
the
doing
Sunday.
yet?
I don't. I actually, I'm partnering with Boy and Girl Farm,
Yeah.
and I was
I love
talking
those
with.
guys.
They're great.
They're so great.
And Joe is like hilarious.
Yeah,
Like,
I
love when he
always keep
delivers.
Joe, like, whenever he comes to deliver at the restaurant, I'm there. Like, we end up talking for like
Yeah.
30, 45 minutes. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to get a ticket and
Yeah.
stuff. Like,
Yeah, I know, but he likes to talk.
yeah.
So it's hard. I mean, I'm not gonna just like shoo him away.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
like-
he's a nice guy too.
he's
He's got
so
interesting shit to
entertaining.
say. So,
Yeah. But I was chatting with Amy yesterday. I'm like, do you kind of have like a rough idea of what you're going to be harvesting in about 4 weeks? You know? And she sent me back a list. It's like all peppers. It's just peppers.
yeah. Like, so bell peppers, red
Right,
pepper,
like,
green peppers,
Exactly. Like
spicy
3
pepper.
different kinds, 15 different kinds of peppers and
Yeah.
kale and onions and garlic, you know? So, so I've got to wrap my head around that.
So is it going to be savory or sweet?
Well, Lainey.
This will air before the thing, so people will hold you to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's gonna be savory because not like I'm not afraid to do a dessert with peppers
Okay.
or onions. I've been dared before and done it. But Lainey, our pastry chef, is also gonna have a table.
Oh, cool.
So she'll handle the sweet and I'll
Yeah.
handle the savory.
So how often do you and Lainey do a head-to-head pastry cook-off?
Oh my gosh, never.
Never.
No.
Who's
I mean, I
better?
just turned it
Who's
over
better?
to her. Who's better?
Who's better pastry chef?
I can't say that. I think we're very different in our approaches, like very different.
How so?
She's fun, and I'm not.
You are fun.
Like
Do-
she has
you're
a
little
fun
more,
approach.
You're a little more serious.
Yeah, I hate to I'm a serious chef.
Yeah,
she's a fun
you are
chef.
a serious chef.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that. Okay, so she's a little more fun. She's a little more like playful.
Yes.
With her stuff, her combinations and things like that.
Yeah.
Your desserts are usually pretty grounded in like familiar stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then like with playful twists and different weird ingredients and stuff. I want to get back to the serious chef thing about, because one thing I've been thinking about a lot lately and talking to a lot of different chefs and stuff about, and my chefs too, I've got a ton of super talented chefs that work for me now, about your cooking voice, right? It's like, what are you trying to say?
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a hard thing to train people to mature into, right? Because I think when you're, at least for me, when I was a young chef, like I just wanted to be the best, right? So I had to be more creative and the coolest technique or like whatever, right? All that pretentious shit that goes into like chefing. And like much later did I realize that I really should just be telling whatever story it is I'm trying to tell through my food.
Yeah.
And I have to find a way to use that vehicle, right? My food or my dish to tell that story. What is that story for you?
That's
Since
a
you're such
really
a serious
interesting
chef.
question. So when I was doing primarily desserts, I was telling the story of the ingredient and where it came from. And that was enough for me to sort of set me on fire and spark that, vision for each dish. I am still finding whatever my voice is as a savory chef. I don't know. I feel like an infant. And, I think it's a good time, even though it's been very difficult and stressful and humiliating and like just rough to make that transition and to go from a medium where I'm so fluent and so comfortable with the preparations and with putting them on a plate to a place where I still am intimidated, because God, if there's a lot to learn in pastry, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm gonna make somebody mad. There's always more to learn.
Right.
And, having done pastry for 20 years and having sort of transitioned to savory like 4 or 5 years ago, there's not a comfort level. And
Right.
I think if you don't have a comfort level, your voice is sort of a secondary, So, I have a role within our kitchen of making sure that we're doing what we do the best we can, in the best way, the cleanest, with the best sourcing, and with proper technique, right?
Yep.
So that's my primary focus. And then I'm having to learn
The
alongside.
proper technique.
Yeah.
Like,
To teach it to people.
right.
You know?
What's that process look like for you? Like, is this a trial and error thing, or are you using friends and like, you know, do you have a mentor? Do you have somebody who's like,
No,
hey,
I mean, I
Ashley,
really
try
don't. I do call up and have called up a lot of friends along the way to ask their advice on things. But, and at a certain point, like at this point, I feel like, okay, I probably should lay off that, you know, because I'm getting to where, you know, I can figure some of this stuff out without having to call someone who might not want to necessarily share their secrets with with me. So I don't know. I think that like a lot of like the technique stuff with what we do on our menu is fairly basic knowledge, you know? So it's not like I haven't had a comfort level with that, because I've been around those menu items and that stuff for years. But it's the stuff that I need to do to find our next chapter and where to take things, you know, during these slow evolutions and changes. That's the hard part. You know, putting out a lot of features where I'm like, oh, I'm not happy with this, you know? I mean, because I don't have time for trial and error. Really, it's like you've got to do it and put it out there.
Right.
Like, and
that's the trial and error.
Yeah.
You're like,
sorry, guest.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've all suffered through that. Like, we've all had a feature not work the way we want it to, but you sell it because it's good enough. Like, it doesn't look the way you want it. The plate up is like not right or whatever.
And we nitpick ourselves so much, right?
And that's a hard thing to do, to say this is good enough, right? And good enough isn't bad. It's just that I'm a psychotic perfectionist,
right?
And like I could spend weeks on this one dish and still not put it in my repertoire. I'd be like, it's shit, right? And you're like, it's not shit. It's just not.
It's not right. And that's really difficult. And I'm the same way. Like, it's like I'm never happy with any of my plates these days, right?
Yeah.
But then if I really think back, I was never happy with any of my plates.
Yeah.
As a dessert chef either. You know, it's just that it's always got to be better than the last one, you know, to a ridiculous extent.
What does a plate need to be perfect for you?
Oh my gosh. A lot of it has to do with the behavior of certain ingredients. And I know. What
does that mean?
So like, okay, so like I know how a custard sits on a plate. You know, I know how a cake behaves, and if you can build it this tall before it flops over, or you know, that kind of thing. How these certain sauces are gonna, what the color's gonna be, and what the gloss is gonna be, what the texture's. And I do not have that comfort level with knowing how that ingredient that I've prepared is gonna sit on the plate, and how it's gonna look, and what color it's gonna be, and what the visual texture is gonna be. And so, you know, if it doesn't fit what I had in my mind, which is usually something like spectacular,
right? Yeah.
Then I'm not happy with it.
Right.
Yeah. And that happens more now because I'm just listening right now, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's my time to listen, and has been for several years.
What does that feel like for you? I mean, obviously it's you described it as being, you know, it can be nerve-wracking and frustrating and all that, but I mean, are you embracing that kind of part of the chapter that you're in right now? Like, okay, cool, I have to like learn all this shit. Like, I have to pay attention. I need to like, are you embracing that, or is it kind of like a headbutt, like I want him to be there, but
right. I mean, I have to embrace it, right? This is where the restaurant needs me. This is like, I am serving our business more effectively, overseeing the entire kitchen, than I would be as just making the desserts.
Are you writing all the menus and developing all the food now? Do you have a chef like working under you?
No, like right now it's still me.
Okay.
And you know, we're just coming out of being like so understaffed, you know, during COVID, and you know, I'm a little bit selfish with that kitchen time, because I am still trying to learn as much as I can. And so, at a point in my life, maybe in my career where I should be getting out of the kitchen, I'm in there more, just because I feel like I can't learn what I want to learn and teach what I want to teach being out of the kitchen. So
it sounds like you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
I am embracing it, to answer your question. And, I feel good about what I'm doing for the business. I feel like that's whole, I feel good about what I'm contributing. And I also feel like it's kind of a good time for me as a chef to be figuring out what my voice is, because there's a lot of, focus on chefs appropriating other cultures' cuisines, right? So to be able to learn in the environment of like, I need to do what's true to my story and not rely on taking bits and pieces from other people's stories, So I think it's actually like a good period in time in history for me to be learning what that voice is.
Cool.
And I'm okay with not getting the reactions and the accolades that I did, at a certain point in my pastry career, because like I said, it's just my time to listen, not to talk and not to be talked about. And I'm fine with that.
Is it important for you to get recognized, to have people respond to maybe what happens next with your cooking as a savory chef? Do you desire to get accolades, and everybody wants a pat on the back, it's nice, I think some people reach a point where they just don't give a fuck anymore. They're like, yeah, don't tell me I'm great. I don't think so. My mission is something else. My mission is not about getting approval from you on my dish. It's about teaching whatever. It could be a number of things. Is that an important step for you for this transition, to get some recognition and approval in that aspect?
So when I first sort of turned the pastry thing over to our pastry chef and took on the savory, it's like, the less you know, the more you think you know, right? So I was like, well, I'm going to be able to make this transition super easy. I am really great at combining flavors and doing these, these whimsical, cool things. And it's going to be great. It might take me a year, and then I'm going to be right back where I was, and, that wasn't happening. And then COVID happened, and it's okay, well, forget that. That's not what we're doing right now.
Yeah, you're in stay alive mode.
Right. That point. But honestly, it really has attenuated for me. I am not great at handling that kind of attention, personal attention, gracefully or well, just because of I think we all have imposter syndrome, right?
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that anything that I do is completely original. It's all a hodgepodge of experiences and things that I've learned over the years, right?
Right. So when I have that kind of attention focus, it makes me feel weird. And I think because there's just this inherent lack of self-esteem just from being such a perfectionist and other things. I was never comfortable. I appreciated it. It's great. And I'm I should be really happy about this, right?
Right.
But it didn't make me feel the way I wanted to feel.
Yeah.
And it just, I felt very uncomfortable all the time. Not that I wasn't appreciative, but I was just kind of I don't know, how to react to this.
Is that a response to maybe not believing it, or?
I don't really know.
I mean, for me, I always felt
it's an awkwardness thing too, not being able to gracefully accept a compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I totally get that.
Yeah.
I mean, I usually just ignore people. When I get compliment, I'm just I'd let it go over my head, and I'm so I don't act crazy about it.
Right.
Right. It's just okay, cool. I'm glad that that it made you happy, but that was the point.
Right.
I don't need you to fluff me over it.
Right.
It's good.
Right. And I would feel I was getting fawned over for almost like doing a party trick in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not that great. Like I didn't save anybody, you know?
But maybe you did.
Maybe. I mean, that would be great. But as
you
far as I know, I didn't.
Do you think that people are coming into your restaurant and having experiences that maybe change their view on stuff or change their lives or change their day?
That would be the ideal, right? And you know, that kind of like attention, it's great for business, right? Mm-hmm. So that's sort of where I'm at right now. It's like, okay, a certain amount of this is good. It's good because it's good for the business. Mm-hmm. So when the business gets great compliments, great reviews, gets publicity, then I'm happy. And I'm not necessarily as comfortable when it's about me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like I got to put myself out there.
Doing what it's supposed to do. We're affecting people in a positive way. They're enjoying it. Mm-hmm. That's where we're supposed to be.
Right.
Leave it at that.
And that's enough.
Yeah. Don't make it about me and my like.
Right.
Gotcha. Cool. So you've been doing the pastry stuff for about 5 years. It was like before COVID, right? How long have
it was
you been
like right before COVID. I think it was around 2018, maybe toward the end of summer is when I took over that side of the kitchen.
I'm going to be Hawkeye in your station at the picnic, seeing what you got going on. I'm going to be like, what's she working on?
What pepper dish?
Yeah, I know it's going to be peppers. So that's funny. Do you know what's next for you? Is there anything next? Is it just working on keeping 300 what it's doing? Do you have any big plans?
So we just moved our pastry operation to a commissary kitchen.
Nice. Which
was a long time coming and something that I had been hoping that we could do, either, you know, have another outlet or, you know, do this, which is a next step to that. So it's going to be a really good opportunity for us to possibly develop, you know, another revenue stream or another, you know, sort of side of the business.
Nice.
But also it's giving us the space in the main kitchen to do more. Mm-hmm. So that's very new. That's like 3 weeks old. So cool. So I'm looking forward to sort of seeing what we can do with this new kind of breathing room and space. And it's already like a lot less stressful for everybody, which is when there's a lot of tension in the kitchen, there's not a lot of room for innovation or enjoying the process of anything, you know?
Right.
And a lot of that tension in our case comes from never having the space to do your work.
Yeah. It's
a difficult battle.
Yeah.
You know, just to walk to the cooler and back.
That's something that's becoming a lot more important to me as I get older. And I mean, I'm not in the kitchen like I used to be, but I mean, I worked in some of the like busy New York City kitchens that are like in the basement. You're on top of each other. It's a brutal, you know, battle just every night to get through the shift. Yeah. And so like, that's what I know. Right. And we did that for years at Five Church, and, you know, in Charleston, at Church in Charleston is very small, difficult kitchen to work in. It's tough. And that's great and everything when you're 20 something years old and have a chip on your shoulder and something to prove. But if you really are trying to be serious about the experience and the food you're putting out, you have to pay attention to like the how you get it to the plate, right? You have to have enough space to store things properly, to work effectively, to have your mise en place, you know, like, I mean, just like the early days of having like your mise en place literally on a cutting board. Yeah. You've got this, you know, 26 by 14 inch cutting board. That's your area, and it has your knives, your mise en place, all your stuff. It's really hard to work that way and to stay motivated and inspired in that environment.
Yeah, when everything feels hard, it saps a lot of energy.
Do you feel a sense of inspiration having that space now in there? Like, do you feel like just everybody's kind of like...
Absolutely. And I feel the sigh of relief with the staff, you know, on both sides, in the pastry department and culinary. So So like I said, it's brand new. We're still sort of figuring out how the rhythm of that and like how it's going to work, because we still got to transport everything. And we're doing a lot more, you know, in the bread and pastry department than we were pre-COVID. So like
now that you have the commissary and the space to do it.
Well, no, we have been doing it, and that's part of the reason. It was like, we have like completely outgrown being in the space together. So yeah, we're still figuring it out, but I can feel sort of this sense of, you know, new possibility, you know, which is nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Where do you have a vision for where you'd love to see that go? Like, is it bake shop? Is it a online retail situation? Like, what is like your vision say? Or are you just kind of like, let's see what we can do?
I think really my goal is to keep 300 East going in whatever form is feasible. You know, like everyone says the business model for a restaurant is changing. Like the traditional model is not going to work anymore. And there's a lot about that I feel has merit to it. And so if we have the ability to be nimble and other ways to get our product to people, then we'll endure, you know? Yeah. Because things are getting like more and more difficult, you know, just rising costs for everything. Yeah. And in a industry where the profit margin is already so small. I mean, blah, 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 you know?
I mean, that's the reality, you know? I mean, the reality is the small profit margins and costs are going up. Yeah. Like, that's it. So you can either make even less profits or you can raise your costs. And then, you know, and it raises the question of how much are your guests willing to pay? Right. Like, is the experience worth it to them to come out to your restaurant if they have to pay X more than they used to? Right. It's a valid question. Yeah.
And I think that we haven't quite hit that point yet. I mean, we did have to raise our prices quite a bit recently. It's like we're paying like twice as much for a product as we were 2 years ago. Like it's crazy.
We have not raised prices to this point, but I think it's inevitable that it has to. You know, we the ownership have just been being hemorrhaging. Because of it, because we didn't want to alienate our guests coming out of COVID. Right. We wanted to protect the business and we wanted to normalize things and all that, and that's all. And I think brilliant and good strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as a group, we can only endure those losses for so long. Where it's like, okay, we have to do something. So I think that's coming. It won't be huge. Like we're not gonna. The goal for us always is not to alienate our guests. Right. We don't ever want to price somebody out of our restaurant. You know, we want it to be accessible to a large group of people. Yeah. You know, somebody can come in and have a casual lunch with us and be fine. Or they can come in and have a blowout celebratory dinner. Both are, you know, part of the model. Right. So that's kind of been why we've been, let's not jump to that first. Like, let's see what happens. But it's clear that there's no quick answer. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But
yeah. I feel that too. Yeah. Because we're a pretty casual place, so we can only go so high before people are going to start to look askance at the menu and prices and go elsewhere. Right.
Yeah. Or not go out, period. Right. Like, is that a thing?
Yeah, definitely.
I hope not.
I know. It's scary. It's scary. There's a lot of stuff happening. So, you know, if we can find any way possible to be flexible and nimble and, you know, stick around. Yeah. That's what I want for the business.
I think doing a lot of these events and stuff, like these public events, is helpful. I think, you know, for me, like I don't feel like I need to get like publicity or anything. Like I think in my early 5 church days, like I did every event I could do because I wanted to get out in front of people. Like, oh, there's this new place, check it out. Now for me, that's changed. It's not about promoting what we're doing. It's about reminding people that like, hey, this is here. We're here for you. Exactly. You know, like this is about like a place where you can go and get out of that shitstorm that everybody's dealing with every day, right? Like you go to work or work from home or whatever you're doing. restaurants are the place where you go to like pause that shit for an hour and a half or 2 hours, like whatever, and have somebody take care of you, have somebody cook for you or serve, like whatever. And so that's what it's about for me now. It's like, just keep doing these events to remind people of what restaurant, what hospitality is about.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
So I think that's good to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, same. Someone asked me the other day, how is, with all the hardships that the restaurant industry has endured, blah, 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 every industry. But how does this help you, like, to do these events? Is there any, like, monetary aspect? Like, well, no.
Yeah. We don't, there's no money being made off these.
But it is good in that, if you don't have the chance to put yourself out there in front of the diner a lot, this is the chance, remind them who you are and that you're there, and, sort of start that rapport or maintain that rapport, So, yeah, it's definitely got its advantages.
Sorry. Like what you were saying, absolutely. But also, like, to remind them what they should be doing, right? Like, this is an option. Like, you can come out to these dinners. You can come to my restaurant. Like, that's there for you. Like, don't forget. Yeah. I know everybody's been, like, had the wool, like, covers pulled over their heads for the past 2 years. Like, are we going to make it? So that message of just, like, hope that, hey, there's normalcy. Like, we're still doing what we do.
Yeah.
I think
that's
is
a good
important.
point. For sure. We just started doing events again. The first one, I think, was we did that Streets Festival downtown in April. Lainey did that one, and now we're starting to get back into, like, festivals and dinners and events. And so I'm looking forward to it, because I just stopped doing it. I just completely stopped doing it, or even entertaining the thought, because it was just too much. Like, it did not make sense at all. But yeah, it's good to be doing that again.
Is there any other? That's awesome. I'm glad you guys are getting back to normal. Yeah, me too. Starting to figure it all out. That's awesome. Is there anything else you want to chat about? We've been going for like an hour 15, so
that's a long podcast.
That's not bad.
Yeah,
I ended up talking with Helen Schwab.
Okay.
So I never, that was, have you listened to that episode?
I have not listened to it, but it's on my list.
You got to listen to Helen. She was great. We ended up talking for like 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Like, I'd never spoken to her before. So I met her. We sat down here, started talking, and like 2.5 hours later, I was like, Helen, it's like, I got shit I got to do. I mean, I could sit here all day because she's fascinating.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
and we only
absolutely.
scratched the surface of like some of the stories that she had. And I actually need to get her back on here. But is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
I don't think so.
Cool.
It's been great.
Thanks for coming out and doing the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. We'll do it again sometime.
Totally.
I'm gonna circle back in another few months, and we're gonna see how that savory thing's going.
Okay.
If you need any tips, hit me up.
I will.
Yeah.
Don't say that, because I will.
That's fine. You got my number.
All right.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you.
Cheers.